About 10 days ago, I returned from Nigeria. Question tonight of why now dialogue, why is it important now, is one that makes imminent sense for Nigeria, and what I'm going to try to do is connect it to the United States as well. In Nigeria, as many of you may know, because in January there were reports that several hundred people were killed in what was termed inter-ethnic and inter-religious violence in Jos, there has been a history of people having a difficult time getting along religious lines. There have also been people who've been working very valiantly, very productively, in a way that is tremendously inspiring to me, to many of my colleagues, to try to address some of those sources of conflict. It's clear that why dialogue is important is because ultimately we all have choices as to how we address our differences with others. In Nigeria, over the past decade, there have been over 150,000 deaths that have been related to what's been reported to be interreligious and interethnic violence. The pastor and the imam are two remarkable people who in the early 90s were leaders of warring militias. Pastor James Wuye and the Imam Muhammad Ashafa were committed to protecting their faith in the face of religious tensions. When everybody is protecting their faith, something that they treasure and hold very dearly, as Nigerians do, it's quite likely that little sparks can ignite very large flames. And around 1994, Pastor James lost his right arm in an attack that was part of a religious conflagration. Imam Ashafa was challenged by a colleague to go and to see James in the hospital and to make peace with him. The two had known of each other because they both worked in Kaduna, a large city in Nigeria. But they had very little relationship, and when Ashafa came to see him, James basically sent him away because he was his enemy. The short story is that by 1995, the two men had not only made their individual peace together, but they had founded the Interfaith Mediation Center, which continues its efforts today to work in Jos and work in many other areas of Nigeria, bringing attempts to utilize dialogue and a variety of other activities to address religious differences. 1995 was also the time that I began my relationship with the Public Conversations Project. It was a time that followed John Salvi, a self-described pro-life advocate, going into two women's health clinics in Brookline with a gun and killing several women. And many people related that to the kind of environment and atmosphere of political rhetoric that dominated the issue of abortion here in the US and particularly in Massachusetts. At the time, it was not unusual for the level of political discourse to be composed of, "You're a baby killer," "Oh yeah, well you hate women." At the time that I got trained as a mediator, I went to a mediation conference and heard my colleague, Bob Staines, who's here somewhere, hi Bob, talking about the work of the Public Conversations Center, Public Conversations Project, which really focuses on divides that relate to core values, differing worldviews, and different sense of identity. And he talked about the goal of PCP dialogues as being building trust and relationship and helping people to have conversations where they could learn and understand more about where each other came from, not where there would be an attempt to promote, as they would say in Nigeria, Chrislam. Because in Nigeria, the Christians don't want to become Muslim, the Muslims don't want to become Christian. But the PCP approach is really aimed more at learning and understanding. And I heard about this and heard about the fact that they were beginning to look to recruit some volunteer facilitators to engage people in pro-life, pro-choice dialogue around the issue of abortion. Over the course of 2 years, I was one of those facilitators who was involved bringing together a number of groups of people and heard things that stood me on my head, from the "you're a baby killer, you're a woman hater," to hearing people talk not just about what they believed, but about how it related to their personal experience and how their views were shaped, and to hearing people say things that were extraordinarily deep, meaningful, and disclosed the kind of detail that one rarely heard publicly. For example, when someone could say, "I am pro-choice, I will be until the day I die, and I plan to be for a lot longer after that too. And I'm deeply troubled by the fact that every year there are hundreds of thousands of abortions that take place for the express purpose of the destruction of female fetuses. It doesn't change my core beliefs, but it makes me concerned, and it's a way to flesh out and become known as more of a person than a two-dimensional cardboard caricature." I'm convinced that actions like John Salvi's are only possible because people have first successfully dehumanized the other. When we disagree with someone and we can discount them, their humanity, we can see them as just a caricature, as a stereotype, it becomes easier to act out, to do violence, to do the kinds of things that, whether it's John Salvi or what's gone on in Nigeria, are things that all of us regret. The work of PCP, the work of dialogue, I believe, is a rehumanizing process, and I think it's deeply needed.